Hello, Will.
Hello, David.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spooky Livestream 2024. This is the second time we've ever done a Spooky Livestream.
Yeah.
The last time was so much fun and so good that we decided to do it forever.
Yep.
As is always the case with our live streams, if you are in the audience and you can see us and hear us, say so. Say hello in the chat. Leave us a comment and let us know that, A, you can see us and hear us okay, so that we know that everything's working, but also so that we know who's around and who's here and who's around, and say hello to us, and we will say hello to you. I see we already have Ryan. Hello, Ryan. Ryan is a live stream regular. Mm-hmm. And Crawl On, which is a name that I don't recognize. So... yeah. Welcome, everybody. Here we are at the end of another very successful and fun Spook-E season.
It was a good one. This was a good one.
This was a good one. Ali said, yeah, what's up? Excellent. There's everybody. Oh, my goodness. Hello, hello.
Everyone.
The number that it says is people who are watching has not updated, and I can tell it hasn't updated on my thing because more people than that have already
chimed in,
said hello in the comments. It's all right. We'll do a little refresh. There we go. That's good. I like it. That is the numbers we want to see. Hello, everybody. This year's, sometimes when we do a spooky season, we have the idea for what we're going to do well in advance. And it's something that we're just like all year long, oh, it's going to be good, it's going to be good. This one was kind of a surprise. Mm-hmm. This one sort of snuck up on us a little bit. We sat down in the summer to go to decide what is our plan, what's the theme going to be for this year. And it wasn't something that was on the list. It was something that came, Tiny Monsters came up in the conversation, and we were enamored with the idea. So this was a little bit, it wasn't a last minute decision, but it was at the time of planning decision.
It was very in spur of the moment while we were discussing, went, a theme that's not on, because we have a document with, here are themes that we could do, here's themes we definitely want to do, but we just, some that have been on the edge and we want to do it, but we don't actually know how to do that one yet.
Right.
All of those kinds of ideas. We have a whole list of potential spooky themes, I don't know, at least the better part of another decade's worth of spooky on that list. Sure. This one wasn't on there.
Yes. Well, it started with a discussion about kaiju, which has been on the list, and people have suggested that. That is a topic that's come up in the past of a kaiju theme for Spook-E, which we love the idea, and absolutely that is someday probably going to happen. And I think it was me who said it when we were looking at the list, and I went, what if we did the opposite of kaiju? What if we did tiny stuff?
Well, because that the thing that has stopped us from just doing kaiju thus far is because there's the question of, all right, but we can't do kaiju, because that's not physically possible.
Sure.
That's too big. So are we just going to do gigantism, elephant-sized versions of whatever animals?
How do we approach kaiju?
Because that's our magical disclaimer. Godzilla's too big to exist. Let it, even not getting to the atomic heat ray breath.
Yes.
Just that's too big. Animals can't get that big. We've never seen an organism get remotely that size. So how do we get around that? And then that led us to that led David to the idea of, well,
what if we skip that for now?
What if the opposite situation,
a different thing,
which is a much easier thing to deal with. Tiny is easy.
And then I was giddy about the idea of it's such a funny. I put together the announcement image, Tiny Monsters. I was so happy. It's so silly.
Yep.
It is the silliest theme that we've done for Spook-E. Listeners, fans, community, audience, let us know what you thought about this year's Spook-E. Chime in if you had a favorite of our tiny monsters, if there was something you were expecting to show up that didn't show up. say stuff in the comments and we will engage and discuss. Before we start talking more directly to you and looking at your comments, number one, there's a new episode coming out later today.
Yeah.
Number two, the end of the year Q&A form is open, so if you haven't submitted your question yet, go to our website, follow the link to the end of the year Q&A form.
They're building up.
They're building up. We've got like 40 submissions already.
Good.
It's
good.
Keep them coming. And also, I believe you have some show and tell.
Yeah.
I think we can knock that out of the way right up front.
Absolutely. We got some fun fan art this year, and I always am excited for that. And we did this last year with the live stream, so I decided let's share some fan art.
Fan art's so good. Our audience is great.
All right, let's see if I can get... Doot. I don't know if it transitioned the way it was supposed to. Anyway.
Certainly showed up.
It showed up. Boop. Oh, gotta go to the right page. There we go. So, for anyone who's not aware, we have a fan art page on our website. And this is it. So we have a place where when people send us fan art, we've put up fan art over the years. Our very first ever mail-in fan art, all the way up to things that people send us episode-specific. And when we get permission to post it, we post it here. We also have been getting spooky fan art since the beginning. So there's a whole bunch of cool stuff from previous years that you can check out. But we're going to go all the way down to look at this year's and see what stuff people submitted this year, because they're super fun.
The gremlins are so cute.
So,
that is perfect.
DrezzyRX, and I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah, this is a name I've only seen written.
Sure. DesiRX?
Yeah, DesiRX made this gremlin post, and I love the little Mogwai babies. We got them cleaned to the back, which we talked about as part of the features, that they're not popping out of the back, but babies are clinging to the back, and you might see them scurry off if they got splashed with water. And then our horrible, hairless...
Yes, so off-putting.
It's good
Carrying
stuff.
some nesting materials.
Yup. Nailed it. Michael also submitted a similar gremlin.
Yeah, the eye inspiration is so fun.
Yeah, I love how clearly there is eye in there. We got some cool info and background so that they added their own lore.
Yep, sometimes people will do that in their art where they'll have... And also here's the field notes, which is very fun.
I love that. People have also done like stats for like D&D style things, and it's great. So Gremlin, awesome.
Very cool. Oh my goodness.
Desi also made a fairy mantis.
I love its human face.
I love the hands.
And the hand. Oh yeah, the hand. It's got fingers, kind of.
The hand.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and one
with the short little antennae are very cute.
And working the face into just the texture of the exoskeleton.
Yeah, just the
very
borders
clever.
between the segments.
Yep.
It's got a little nose.
Yep.
That's so good.
Oh, it's fun.
Love it.
And then
red cap.
Also a red cap from Desi.
No salamanders as of yet.
Yes.
Fan art will continue to come in, but so far, if you're out there and you're sitting on a salamander art, let us know.
Absolutely. Our red cap, which I love the armor in the background with the halberd. It's so good. That's such a nice addition. Chewing on some bones, bloody face.
Oh, it's so uncomfortable.
Short-snouted, naked-faced. Excellent. Just gross.
I love how gross it is. It's certainly one of our grossest.
Oh, yeah.
Almost certainly our grossest vertebrate spooky creature.
Just nasty. And then we have a few for Jackalope. We got sent art by Riley, but SSS High Art.
It's so cute.
It's great. The ears, the little tail.
This is the first. Last year we got some art for our cutie friendly dragons. which were friendly and fun.
Yes.
This is by far the cutest Cute-E art because it's the cutest creature that we've made in Cute-E so far. This is like a perfect encapsulation of the Cute-E concept.
Yep.
And this art does a really good job of bringing that.
It's great.
It's so good. And I was taking a little drink of some whiskey or something.
They eat fermented fruits, so they like alcohol. Bellowing.
Officially, now this is a PG-13 stream. They've shown alcohol consumption
that is true.
on screen.
Well, hooch. This is just hooch. We got some of them fighting, which is just, they're cantankerous. I love their little scowl.
Yeah, they're so scowly.
And then Desi also made one, which is also, I love.
Ooh, yeah.
The antlers look very much like a musk deer and smaller deer antlers.
Well, this one has a very Bambi face.
Yes.
Which is very nice.
Well, and I like that it's in between looking like a rabbit and a deer. It's got that very nice,
That's great. I would love to hear...
We'll leave this until it got right. Yay!
And some of our artists will do this. On the Discord. So a lot of these are posted on Discord, and then we'll share them up here, or they're posted on, or they're sent to us via email. And sometimes the artists will tell us a bit about the creative process that went into it. Mm-hmm. And I love getting to learn about, I looked up this animal and tweaked this or that, or this was the artistic process of it is very, very cool.
It's so much fun. And it's great because I love that stuff. I talk about this all the time. I love concept art, the process of something getting created, and the mentality behind it. And I'm doing that when I see a movie monster. I'll see a movie monster and go, okay, cool. Definitely some monitor lizard, definitely some of this, some of those were obviously inspired.
That happened this year at DragonCon. We did, so our friend Sawyer put together a panel for us to be on where we were asked to identify dinosaurs from video games. Mm-hmm. And we would look at the creature and go, okay, does this count? Would this technically be a dinosaur? And it was very fun to get to look and go, all right, well, the hands are this animal.
Yes.
And you can see the artist looked at a picture of this animal, and the last one was a skeletal composite that we got to look at and go, all right, that part of the skeleton is walrus, and that part of the skeleton is gorilla, and that part of the skeleton is this. You can see where the inspiration came from.
Yeah. And so, I'm doing that constantly. So it's fun to actually get to watch that process happen with some of our listeners that create art and say, I was inspired by this and I had the idea of this.
Yes.
Yay.
So thank you so much to all of our artists who shared their art with us. And if you are an artist who wants to do more art, feel free to share it with us.
Yes.
We'd love to share those around.
You can retroactively do spooky art whenever you want. If you go back and listen and you go, I didn't draw a vampire. All of those can be updated at any time. It does not have to be within the specific season.
Yes.
We will take spooky art year-round. It's one of the coolest things that have resulted from us doing this crazy podcast.
Ali says, my favorite part of Spook-E this year was learning Jackalope lore. This came up in the Discord. People were talking about, because jackalopes are a very North American, and especially a modern North American legend.
They're very young.
So people were in the Discord talking about, especially people from Europe or other parts of the world, talking about their lack of familiarity and just not knowing what a jackalope is, which is very fun. That is a very fun... It's fun because we get to introduce people to a concept, but weirdly, there's also a little bit of that... Yeah, it's oh, hey, that's one of ours.
That's ours.
That was made by silly people in my silly country.
And it's... Well, and it's fun because, so often there's those things that, what's the word I'm looking for? That just are uniquely flavored to a place, And, they'll talk about this with, just all sorts of countries where it's this is just uniquely this place. It's not that no other place could come up with this, but it's just, it imbibes the vibes of this place.
Yes.
And Jackalope feels like that
Mm-hmm.
stories and the nonsense it's lore that got made up for the Jackalope. It's just a very U.S.
Yes.
lore.
Very United Statesian.
And I love that. I love it. I hadn't known a lot of those details before looking it up either. Because it's a very a lot of those things are local, like to those places out in Montana and so forth. Are you going to find that stuff? There's not jackalope stuff over here in Tennessee and Georgia.
Right. It is very specific to a portion of the country.
Yeah.
I actually don't. Now that I think about it, and I don't remember if this came up in the comment in the discussion. I don't know if jackalopes extend up into Canada.
Yeah, not.
If there are Canadians, I know there's at least one Canadian in the chat here. If there's any, like in Calgary, like are there does the jackalope make it up into Calgary?
I didn't see it mentioned really.
Yeah, as far as I know, it is very U.S.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's one of those funny things where, like, if you mention jackalope to anyone here in the U.S., they'll know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But if you asked about the jackalope, most people wouldn't be able to tell you much about it.
Right.
So that lore is a kind of a very niche little pocket. And it was so fun because it's ridiculous on purpose, which is... We've gotten through lots of ridiculous lore in Spook-E.
Longer than a horse.
Yes, exactly. Like things that are just silly on the face of it because humans have been weird and silly our whole time on Earth, and the stories we make up and tell about things can get really ridiculous. This one is ridiculous on purpose.
Yes.
Which is really one of the only ones that has that, and that's fun.
So Nora says, I don't think it's Canadian, but we know what it is. And Caleb says, if jackalopes were real animals, of course they would be in Calgary.
Yep.
Yes, they absolutely. Calgary, it was kind of made for jackalopes and the like. Lydia said, I loved learning about your realization that fairies don't belong in QD.
Yeah, that was our original plan was...
we picked these 5, and I think it was just swapped.
Yes,
right?
basically. They were just going to be switched places, and fairies was going to be QD because, obviously, Tinkerbell. Easy choice. And then I was taking the notes on Jackalope and had that moment of, this is a really silly animal. Mm-hmm. And so I had that initial thought of, there's nothing spooky in this entire description. Noted. Yeah. And then I just kept going through my notes and gathering notes and got to fairies and started getting through of like, oh yeah, they are like dangerous.
Yeah.
And, like they're mischievous, but like they are threatening. Like fairy circles, very often it was not like don't fall into a fairy circle because you'll have a bad day. It was like, don't mess with fairy circles.
Right.
I'm serious. This is not they were serious.
It has a bit of the unicorn feeling of like the typical portrayal of unicorns is like these pretty beautiful rainbow horses, but the lore of unicorns, they are intimidating, dangerous animals.
Yes, and fairies. As I went through, I was like, even though they are definitely not our spookiest or most dangerous on the list. Compared to the jackalope, they are way more creepy.
Yes.
And the jackalope's the opposite of creepy in every way. And just had that realization, really, they should be switched. Because if anyone's going to end up with something that's just blatantly cute, it's the jackalope.
Yep.
The fairies just aren't quite as cute as one might think.
Ryan says, how many sauropods big is Godzilla?
I mean, the most recent ones for like the largest sauropods is at least 3 sauropods long.
Yeah.
And
how much does Godzilla weigh?
There are stats for that. They have put out an official...
Will's Googling it. So the heaviest estimates for sauropods tend to be up in like the 60 to 80 ton range. I think when Dreadnoughtus came out, there were estimates bouncing around that were like 80 to 100, but I don't know how many of the big ones stuck. But like 60 tons seems like a pretty consistent estimate for like really big sauropod body weight.
And let's see. I'm on the Godzilla wiki.
Sure.
Wikizilla.
Source of all of our important Godzilla knowledge.
For Legendary Godzilla, which is
the new one.
Yeah, the most recent version of Godzilla, and for the American films.
Right,
and,
that King of the Monsters,
yeah.
Kong versus Godzilla.
One of the biggest versions of Godzilla outside of animes. And total length is, at the largest size, because he fluctuates size throughout the films, is 550 to 580 feet long.
So 5 Argentinasauruses.
Yup. And then weight is 90,000 tons in the first movie and 99,000 tons in later movies.
So 1,000 Argentinasauruses.
So like, just ungodly, ungodzilla-ly. Utterly huge. Oh, it gives palm size, a 34-foot palm.
Wow. That's the entire Hollywood Walk of Fame.
3.5 foot long teeth.
Yes.
It's got a whole bunch of things here. I would love to know where all these come from. I'm sure it's
that's
like
a
comic book
screenshot
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like someone was next to Godzilla's mouth, and they went, "Well, this person is 5'8", and this." Phenomenal.
Good stuff.
Ali said during the Salamander episode, I was also thinking skinks, because skinks tend to be shiny like real salamanders.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, lizards and salamanders were sort of the two.
Well, that's often an interesting dilemma that we get to with spooky creatures like that, where ostensibly this is a normal animal, just souped up. Like a salamander's a real animal. We had the same issue when we did the Kraken.
Yes.
Of cephalopods and squids and octopi. That group are real animals, and that's what the Kraken is. It's just souped up. So do we just do that? Do we just take the animal it is and figure out how to soup it up a little bit with evolution? And it's always a weird dilemma, because on one hand, that can be very cool and fun to figure out how to make it as accurate as possible. But then on the other hand, that also, depending on how souped up it is, might be a really simple answer.
Yes, exactly.
That might be a boring conversation. So we often, you'll if you listen to those, you can hear us go, we could, but here's a slightly weirder idea I had, because I think it'll be more fun.
Absolutely happened with the Jackalope this year, where we were like, it could just be a rabbit.
Yep.
But it would be more fun if it was this.
Yes. And so, those groups where you are just a normal animal, but with accessories, we often run into that problem of, if we want to be true to this thing, we should just do that animal, but that might not actually be as cool.
Ali said, what is Godzilla's SVL? 350 to 400. His tail's pretty long.
I was going to say, no, it's probably...
half?
Yeah, half or a little bit less, because, the tail is, I think, slightly the majority of the length.
Yeah.
At least in certain versions of Godzilla, the tail is
snout
definitely...
vent length. Godzilla's vent is huge.
Oh, yeah.
You could go spelunking.
You'd need a snout vent length and then just a V length to figure out the size of this creature.
We did have some people suggesting other tiny monsters that could work.
Oh, yeah.
Pow Puck says Chupacabra, Kappa, and Hopkinsville goblins. We did discuss... I don't think we talked about the Chupacabra specifically in our tiny monsters discussion, but the Kappa and goblins both did also come up in our discussion.
Chupacabra, I don't think entered the idea, because that's also got a secondary categorization of it's a cryptid,
and it's also a American mythology kind of. So that's one that is very much like that. That will inevitably probably show up in a different category.
Same for Kappas in my mind, where it's almost surely if we do a Japanese or
East Asian,
an East Asian, or I'm blanking on the word for that group of creatures.
Oh, the yokai?
Yokai, thank you. My brain could only think of Oni. The yokai, like if we do like a yokai season of those kinds of things, something akin to that, Kappa will for sure show up in that. I guarantee, because that's my favorite yokai, is the Kappa.
Sure.
So it's going to show up in whenever we do something related to that neck of the woods mythology. Goblins, I ran into the problem. Now, I didn't look up Hopkinsville goblins specifically,
Sure.
but goblins and
we talked a bunch about goblins, elves, that whole genre.
Those ran into a similar thing that the fairies honestly ran into, but fairies are so much more famous that it was easy to excuse still doing them. That
sometimes we pick a theme and we're like, well, but this has to be in it.
Yes.
In some version.
You can't do tiny monsters and not do
fairies. Has to be in there.
Yes. Those, when I looked them up, there was not actually like a distinct, here is what an imp is, here is what a goblin is. Mm-hmm. They were such vague catch-all terms.
Well, it's like demon.
Yes.
It's like, there's not like a specific thing that that a demon is.
There's not a list of traits that is remotely consistent. It's why when we did dragons, we had to make it a whole season and split it up. Because if we just said, and now we're going to do dragons, here's the multitude of global dragons.
A 4-hour episode.
Like, with features that range from no limbs to all the limbs to wings to no wings to just a snake. These ran into the same problem where it's like goblins, when we think of them now in the modern sense, we think of pointed ears, hooked nose, green skin,
right.
Related to orcs maybe somehow, or like things like that. But in truth, in a lot of the stories, it's like just tiny people. Just tiny, grumpy or mischievous people. There's a whole bunch of things like brownies and... there's another one I'm forgetting. But a bunch of those like house spirit type things that were considered in the same category as goblin. Mm-hmm. Like they were goblins. They just were friendly ones. So it was too vague a term to easily pluck features from. Elves had the same issue. Elves also fell into the fairy stuff a whole bunch.
Yeah. So there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Well, and then we also want to make sure that each episode is distinct.
Yes.
So
we didn't want it to just be 4 different tiny humans.
Exactly. Yeah. So if we knew we were going to do fairies, and once we sorted out like what is that going to look like, well, that means that we're not going to do goblins or leprechauns or brownies or those things. We have to pick something different. Redcaps, we debated a little bit because redcaps are fairies.
Yep.
But then once you went into the lore and got some background on it, it looked like, all right, we'll be able to distinguish these.
That was kind of the stand-in instead of doing like goblins, because they really are the more goblin-y. A lot of historical goblins are not as goblin-y as modern goblins are.
Yes.
Yes. It's kind of like Norse like trolls and stuff are not as trolly as we think of trolls nowadays.
Yes.
Like they are much more varied, they are much more diverse, and not as just blatantly they eat people and are evil. So it's got that kind of thing where our modern perception has often narrowed on a lot of these mythical creatures instead of widened, which seems like the opposite of what you would think would happen as the stories continue to get told, but that's what has happened with a bunch of them.
Miscellaneous has also suggested drop bears.
Yep.
That could have been in there, which was, I don't know if we talked about drop bears specifically.
I don't think so. I don't think that one came up.
But that one, similar to the Chupacabra, that's one where it's like, but someday we'll do an Australian
and
match.
100% drop bears will make it onto that list.
Which would be super fun. And they might be cutie. They, who knows how that ends up. There was also Sarah Grace. Hi, Sarah Grace said it would be fun to look at the soot sprites from Spirited Away as tiny monsters.
We did talk about those. So we talked about that. We could do tiny things from specific stories. So it's sprites from Spirited Away and Stitch and things like that. And that often comes up where it's like, there's this thing, it is a specific TM thing, which is one thing we consider just because it means that if we ever want to do more stuff with Spook-E, we probably can't
might be
include
limited.
those.
But for this one, we definitely will switch back and forth in seasons where, like, our Dungeons and Dragons season was very much intentionally this specific creature.
Yes.
Whereas our Tiny Monsters was more broad. We wanted to keep... We also try to keep it thematically balanced. So we try to avoid having it be something like 3 general categories and then 1 specific creature.
Yeah. That'll happen. Like, that happened with plants, but that, honestly, for anyone who... Because we didn't do a live stream for that season, that's because we ran out of plants.
We had 5.
Yep.
We had 5 in the... But that was it.
Yep.
And then we chose 4 of those, and we didn't do Killer Tomatoes.
Yes. So, like, we just also ran out of general monster plants, so we had to go, well, there's this one specific kind of famous one from this one book series.
But also, that one had sort of the fairies feeling to it, where it was like, yeah, but we have to do Triffids.
Yes.
And a bunch of people have specifically requested Triffids.
Yep.
So there's a whole art to balancing out what ends up going in to the episodes. Yen says, to answer a question from QD, Rasselbachs are an actual joke tradition. They are from Thuringia and Brandenburg, while the more elaborate Walpertinger is from Bavaria.
Yep. Yeah.
Caleb says, I actually incorporated a race of beings inspired by your gremlins in a short story.
Ooh.
Delightful.
Cool.
Lydia says, listening to the Jackalope episode with my husband from South Dakota was so fun. He was so thrilled you mentioned Waldrug. Waldrug? It's such a weird... We and this isn't just a U.S. thing, but the U.S. is where I've experienced it. It's so funny what we culturally cling on to.
Yes. As,
like, this is our hometown, the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota.
It's fun.
Fantastic.
I was on the note of the Rasselbach and Wolpertinger. I was delighted to find out that there were UK versions of
other jackalopes.
This kind of creature, and that's so cool. But like I said, when I was going through the lore, they mentioned the fact of, like, these are definitely just fun nonsense things that people have done, but people have been putting antlers and horns on rabbits for centuries. Mm-hmm. For some reason.
They live in the same place. And they do. It's very funny, actually, as we got into the discussion and as we saw the art, rabbits and deer are shockingly similar.
Yep.
So it makes a lot of sense to, they tend to look kind of similar. They live in a similar place. They live similar lifestyles. Their fur color is often, they have the ears.
Yep.
It's not actually very surprising to think that people associated those two over and over again throughout time.
Also, just story-wise, putting horns and antlers on things is a thing humans like to do. You've got the unicorn. There's horned birds in stories and stuff. And so just slapping headgear onto animals to make a mythical animal is a thing people do, and very often it's a way to elevate them to a status of grandeur, because
that's what horns do.
Exactly.
In real life,
we see horns, and that is a status. Like, even we are able to see very clearly that's impressive, and that's what it's there for, and that's what we're going to use for story-wise. We're going to put a big rack of antlers on this animal to show you that it's important. So it makes sense, but it is oddly consistent that there's, like, a number of times it's happened sillily, and then also a number of times it's happened mythologically. And we want to put antlers on rabbits.
We like putting horns on stuff. Jay says, I suggest hoofed monsters to get unicorns for QD. Unicorns will inevitably show up somewhere sometime.
Oh, yes.
We've talked about a number of different themes that could theoretically be the one that includes unicorns.
Yep.
We've talked about doing medieval theme.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about... we entertained briefly doing a horse season.
Because there's a bunch of horse
you totally could do.
mythical creatures.
Or maybe a season about mounts.
Yes.
Steeds.
So
we will find unicorns or so. They could go in 1,000 categories.
The horse theme is one that I think of regularly because I have 90% of the list in my head, and it would be so it's so satisfying to be able to fill out an entire list with
just horses.
Actually, very different horses.
Yes.
Like, actually very distinct horse creatures. But then you run into the issue of, does that mean we're going to be starting from a horse every time? Or,
right.
Like,
are these going to be too overlapping?
Yeah, like, even though their lifestyle's very different, are we going to have to kind of start from a similar place? Or are we going to have to arbitrarily pick something different just so that we're not doing this, like...
Which we've done.
Will that be kind of limiting? And maybe, but it would be
super fun.
I'm not going to say anything else that would be on the list because that would give it away.
Milu says, do you know of any mythological diseases, contagions, or plagues, things that could be evolved as bacteria or viruses? There are absolutely, story, especially in like sci-fi and fantasy.
Yes, I mean, like, zombieism is very is often one of those. Even though we went with a parasite for ours,
I think most of the time, though, I mean, it would really be less about evolving the anatomy of the creature and more about evolving in epidemiology.
Yeah.
And why do they act the way they do? Why do they cause the symptoms that they do? As Milo has pointed out, that is definitely outside of our wheelhouse.
Oh, yeah.
We would need...
Extremely.
We could reach out. All right, there's epidemiologists we could talk to. I feel like we'd end up pulling from like movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be the way to go, because there are, like, historical stories of diseases, but those are often just misunderstood actual events, like, the dancing plague and stuff, where it's like that one, there's still some mystery around exactly what all the details are of that. But that was a thing that happened. Like, we don't understand it, so I can't think of a lot of mythological. I'm sure there are ones, but I don't know of them. I feel like, movies and stuff would be a great way to go with a lot of those. Interesting.
It is. There's a lot of ideas. Kammer Literatur says there are a lot of very interesting cryptids / mythological creatures from Brazilian and Amazonian folklore.
Oh, absolutely.
We have talked for a long time. We've talked about the puzzle of doing some sort of spooky season on regional mythos. We've done a little bit of that. We did a bit of that with the dragons. We did Greek mythology.
Yes.
The puzzle of there are so many cool creatures and myths and legends from Native American lore, Mesoamerican lore, Australia, not only in modern Australia, but like First Nation, indigenous culture lore, East Asia. There's all the African. There's tons of creatures from different mythologies, and we have talked a bunch about wanting to explore those, but in a way that is respectful and mindful, and not just a couple of us, United Statesian white folks toying around with other people's mythology.
Because it's not our cult. Like, we are both of European descent, so it feels much more natural to use those myths.
Sure. Well, and those myths also are belonging to cultures that are historically
Exactly.
regularly marginalized and misrepresented in
Mm-hmm.
often harmful ways. And it would be so easy for us to pull a creature from, Native American mythology and go, this is cool, let's evolve it into a monster, and then find that the act of doing that is supremely disrespectful,
Mm-hmm.
and we evolved it from this animal, which is like a taboo in that, like,
Yeah.
it would be so easy for us to misrepresent it and then accidentally insult an entire culture of people by messing around with that mythology.
That we could so easily miss the point.
Yes.
Which is the reason that I was initially given to hesitancy on this was a long time ago. I saw a post from someone talking about Wendigos, which have become very popular in movies and video games and wider culture, but that is a Native American creature in myth, and the moral behind that creature is lost in the retellings of the wider usage. And they were basically saying, like, yeah, all of those monsters is not what the Wendigo is. That's not the point. That is a fully, what's the word? That has lost all the context and meaning that this myth is supposed to have.
Right.
Stop it. and that was the first one that gave me like, oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I get it. That I absolutely can see why that's not entirely cool.
So, that isn't to say that we would never do a season on things like that. But what we would really love to be able to do is be in contact with somebody.
Yes.
Who is on board with this kind of project and would be able to say, I am a representative of this culture, or I'm a scholar of this, or whatever expertise they can bring to it, to be able to say, yeah, don't do this, this, and this, because that would be extremely disrespectful or misrepresentative.
Yeah. Or it's been done historically in disrespectful ways.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that.
It's not that there's something inherently wrong with it, but it's been used wrongly, so there's a history that you don't want to butt up against.
So, if you know people who are our brand of nerdy and who would be able to lend an expert insight into like Mesoamerican mythology or something, we would love to do something like that. We would just need consultation.
Yeah, we need a guide.
We need a guide. We need somebody to actually tell us that we're not going to mess it up.
Yeah, don't touch that. That's hot.
Yes, that would be lovely.
Yeah. So yes, we would love to, because there's so many cool myths out there and so many cool stories that just have a very different vibe than a lot of the ones that we've done thus far.
Caleb says, while we're suggesting spooky seasons, what about creatures from the Cthulhu mythos? That is another one that we've talked about. We did Fish People, season 1, which we did draw heavily from Shadow over Innsmouth?
Yes.
Which led somebody, one of the first bits of engagement we ever got from Spook-E was somebody sent me a link to a song from a Cthulhu Christmas album.
Yeah.
And the song is It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Fishman. And it is, to this day, one of my favorites. It is one of the best things that has ever come out of our audience.
It's great.
I routinely get that song back in my head and sing it. It's phenomenal. I love it so much.
Fantastic. We've talked about doing that kind of a topic. If we did it, we'd probably call it cosmic horror.
Sure.
Because of the...
Well, we wouldn't call it Lovecraftian.
We wouldn't call it Lovecraftian. And Cthulhu is specifically one of Lovecraft's creations.
Sure.
And Lovecraft, for anyone who's unaware, is an extremely problematic figure. Incredibly racist, incredibly problematic in his views of other peoples, and those are worked into his stories, into the DNA of his stories a lot of the time. Like, it's easy to not catch them in some of the ones that are focused on the more crazy topics, but there's plenty out there where the entire, like, mind-bending realization is just racism.
It was the real cosmic horror was the racists we met along the way.
Yep, like there's a few where you read the reveal and it's supposed to be this like, is your worldview not shook? And it's like, you just don't like black people. It's all that this story said. And so that's one where we've talked about, like, we'd have to figure out how we want to get,
sure, how
deal
we want
with
to
that.
navigate around that.
Also, you run into the issue of a bunch of those, by their inherent nature, can't be evolved because they are never described, because they are unknowable, because that's the point of cosmic horror.
Yes.
So it's come up. We are not against doing it, but it's a weird one because you should not actually be able to evolve Dagon, because Dagon has no physical form that is conceivable to a human mind.
Well, and I think that if we were going to do something cosmic horror-y, most likely what we would end up doing is maybe picking one thing from the Cthulhu mythos and then going to other sources.
Yeah, do the thing and do stuff like that.
To mix it up, when we often do like to do that, of picking from a variety of different sources. Yes. So that we get a bit more breadth.
Yeah, flavor. Because they're going to be slightly different takes on that theme, and they're going to be slightly different degrees of that theme.
Yes. I saw one that I was really happy to... Oh, yeah, Caleb said, cursed objects are basically supernatural contagions. That is very intriguing.
Ooh, that's fun.
That is a very intriguing thought.
That is very fun. I saw an artist that did mimics as like stick style and leaf style insects, but they their exoskeleton was just in the shape of an amulet or a mirror or stuff. And so some version of that for a cursed object could be cool.
I did a D&D game once as an intro. I don't think you were no, you were not in this D&D game. I came up with a one-shot one time that had a plant monster that had a lure at the end of a vine that looked like a pile of gold coins.
Yeah.
That, you come over to investigate the coins, and then it's a plant monster that gets you. Which I thought was pretty fun. Boop, boop, boop. Sarah Gray said, have either of you ever considered working on a project with a writing or film studio? Spook-E reminds me so much of what James Cameron wanted for Avatar creature design.
That's been one of my, like, just little kid dreams, and, like, still...
Spook-E the movie.
Well, and not just that, but, like, since I was young,
Spook-E
the idea of being the scientific consultant for a creature feature has been a not actually ever aimed at, but dream job of mine since I was young. And still today, if I ever got offered to be the creature consultant, because like I don't know how to draw the creature, but I could absolutely sit down with the artist and go, yeah, here's 5 animals that do the thing you're talking about.
Yes.
Let's look at the physicality of those creatures and see how we could work it into this one.
Which would be so much fun.
I would happily do that as a job. I have no clue how to get into doing that as a job. So if anyone has any contacts that you want to send my way, I won't say no to it. I've always loved that idea, but I have never actually pursued it just because I don't know at all what to do in that regard.
We have talked a bunch about expanding the Spook-E mythos. We've talked about, making a book out of it. We have discussed with our audience the idea of Spook-E as a game. Spook-E is a TTRPG thing. Or someone, I think, recently suggested Spook-E as like a card game.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of cool angles we could go, which we would love to do.
Yes.
We did recently meet, not just like cross paths with, but actually met and chatted with Steve Jackson.
Yeah.
Which, listen, maybe we can build up that relationship and get a Spook-E board game put together.
Yeah.
Crawlon says, my first exposure to the salamander was in a French graphic novel where it was literally just God.
Salamander supremacy.
Yes. Got a bunch of people talking about hoofed monsters. Jay suggested Puck. Ryan suggested devils.
Oh yeah, I mean you could.
That is a cool angle for that.
You could definitely get interesting. You could get a variety of things pretty easily.
Well, and that is one of the fun, because usually what we do is we go with established categories.
Yes.
Greek mythologies, even sea monsters. Like that is sort of a common category thing.
Like, partially just because that's a catchy title.
Yeah, it's a catchy
and it helps. Way to put out and people to go, I know roughly what this Spook-E is going to be about.
Yes. And because it also, there's already things established in that category. This year was a weird one.
Yes. Where we made up our own theme.
We made up a theme. We made up a category. And it was very funny to me because last year we did dragons. And I remember when we went to DragonCon, we hadn't announced it yet. And I got to show the logo to a few people. And that logo, people were so excited. I would show it and they'd go, oh my goodness. I did the same thing with the tiny monsters revealed this year at DragonCon, and very consistently the reaction was people going, huh.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And because it's not immediately obvious what that means.
Yep.
We've invented a category. And so we absolutely could invent, and we probably will more in the future, invent more categories, which allows us to kind of collect things that aren't otherwise going to easily show up.
Yeah. So, yeah, for sure. That is one that definitely has gotten a little bit of put down some roots in my brain because it would be a fun, weird one to do, like the horses. Yes. It makes me happy, the challenge of coming up with that theme.
Ollie said Tiny Monsters is the first polyphyletic Spook-E theme. Yen says, I was very surprised by how much the fungus episodes influenced your ideas in this year's Spook-E. Fungi got into almost everything.
Yep.
It sure did.
That was purely just because it was fungus on the brain.
Yeah, we talked about we talked about this elsewhere. There were times where I intentionally reined in how much I wanted to incorporate fungi into the Spook-E episodes, partially because I didn't want it to just become everything is fungi.
Yes.
But also because it was stuff that I didn't want to spoil from the fungus episodes.
Yeah, we hadn't recorded the fungus episodes yet.
When we did fairies, we started talking about fungal farming and fungal symbioses, and I was like, I don't want to say too much because I'm just going to be recycling info from the episode that hasn't come out yet.
Yep.
But yes, it was very much on the... You can see it in this discussion. That fungi were definitely forefront in our minds.
Well, and I'm sure if you were to go back and somehow track Spook-E throughout time, you'd see that this concept shows up a whole bunch in Spook-E after they did that episode. Because there's a whole bunch of things that we go, well, now that I know that that's a thing, we can use it.
And that has absolutely happened over the course of Spook-E, that certain ideas that weren't present in the first few seasons of Spook-E became very common in later seasons because it was something that we either didn't know about before that or that we hadn't really considered in reference to Spook-E.
Yes.
And it really does make Spook-E feel complementary to the podcast in that the main series of the podcast is informing what ends up in Spook-E, which is very cool.
Yeah.
Nora says, unicorns were my special interest as a kid, and there are so many different directions they can go because there are so many different mythologies and descriptions.
Oh, yeah. No.
So what I'm hearing is unicorns as like dragons. Unicorns, the whole...
Well, and it's one of those where, there are multiple different unicorns.
Oh, sure.
The I forgot the name now, but the single-horned, not jackalope that we talked about.
Yes.
The Legend of Iskandar was a unicorn horn. Like, the picture is just a unicorn horn.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a ton of those single-horned and described. Sometimes it's curved, but like typically a single what's the word I'm looking for? Tapered horn. And there's like a dozen of those throughout various myths of just like...
Yes.
And then there's this, which is called the, Pakistani unicorn. That's not what it's called. It's got a different name, but it's an animal with a single horn coming off of its head that's very important.
Yep.
There's a whole category of us saying one major horn makes this animal really important and magical. And evidently that's just a human thing. I love it.
That is a thing we like to do.
Yeah, and I've seen people discuss, like, is there something about the hornedness that is somehow psychologically that because most animals it is paired horns, a singular horn is somehow divine or...
Right. Well, it's unusual.
It's unusual and
distinguishes.
Is there something about the number one that sticks in the human brain as the one, that it is all-powerful?
Well, and Ben and Jens, I think, are pointing out that there are sometimes in nature that you can get animals growing what appears to be a single horn.
Yes.
As an unusual growth pattern.
Yeah, that they developed differently and did not grow both horns that they would have.
What? There's a... Oh no, I can't think of it. I'm thinking of some cartoon where someone gets hit in the head with horseshoes and then grows a bump on their head. And then, is this Hercules? Does this happen in Hercules? Yes, it is. That's okay. Got it.
Yep.
It's the River Guardian.
Yep.
And he gets a little unicorn horn.
Yes.
That was it. That was all. Lydia says, I honestly thought you were sneaking in Pokemon. Don't worry, we'll sneak in Pokemon someday. Jay says 2023 was your ocean era and 2024 is the year of fungus.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Well, yeah, last year...
we
did get ocean in... Two of our dragons were aquatic, in part, so... Sure did. So we'll see. We'll have to see what next year's overall Common Descent theme is. Fantastic. Wonderful. In an all-unicorn season, something could evolve from narwhals. That's very funny. I originally read it as you could evolve narwhals.
Yes.
That would be a very funny, spooky theme of animals that are real,
but people think
are mythical, and then we evolve them under the... completely leaving out the fact that they are real.
Yes.
Like, how do we evolve narwhals under the assumption that they are a ridiculous, nonsensical, mythical thing that doesn't actually exist? That would actually be very funny.
Yeah.
To do, like, narwhals and platypuses. That would be a very funny theme.
That'd be pretty cool.
We've spent a lot of time talking about possible future themes for Spook-E, ways to sort of expand on Spook-E, if not spin off Spook-E into the future. So there's also one of the trickiest things with Spook-E is, and this is, we have the same problem with the main series episode list, which is that there are so many ways to go with it. There are so many angles, there are so many possibilities that realistically we are never actually going to do all of them.
No.
Which means that, number one, that's great because it means we'll never run out of material and we'll be able to do this forever. But number two, it means that we are also inevitably going to disappoint ourselves and our audience because, someday we will finish up. We will do the last ever season of Spook-E, and someone will be like, "You never even did this obvious."
Mm-hmm.
I've been waiting since the beginning for you to do.
So we never actually end up getting back to trimmers.
Right, graboids.
To graboids.
We never did graboids the whole time. And we're like, yep, we're so sorry.
Yep.
It's just there's just too many things for us to do.
I never did the worms.
Never did the worms season. Well, and it makes it is part of why I think it's so much fun to discuss these with the audience.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot with our one of our major sort of approaches to podcasting is keeping a lot of secrets, which is a very silly way to do it. But we don't reveal what upcoming episodes are going to be. We don't reveal what upcoming Spook-E seasons are going to be because we like the surprise of it. And sometimes that means there are certain things that we just don't talk about openly with the audience, not because we don't feel like we can, but because we don't want to give stuff away.
Yeah, we don't want to kill that fun.
And for a while, I felt that way with Spook-E, where I was like, well, I don't want to talk too much about possibilities because I don't want to give away what we might do. But the more we talk about Spook-E and the more we do Spook-E, the more I realize that probably most of what people are suggesting we are going to do eventually at some point. And it's so much fun to go through all the ideas, and it's so much fun to get suggestions from the audience that make us go, that would be super fun. Yeah. Spook-E with, who suggests somebody, was it Lexi said real animals. Yeah, a Spook-E theme that was just actual real life animals.
Yes. Yep.
It's so funny. That is extremely funny. And that would be great to do. And I don't know when we're going to do it. I don't know if we're going to do it, but it is very fun to get to talk about the possibilities.
Well, and yeah, it's like you said, it's the same thing that comes up with our main episodes. It has its ups and downsides. One of the upsides is it means we can be a little picky, so we don't have to feel like we are forced to do a topic that we don't actually feel that confident on, whether it's Spook-E or a normal episode. And that's, being able to be picky is always a good thing. That is if I'm giving life advice on this live stream, that's my life. If you have the chance to be picky, it's good. That is a good sign. That's great here, but it does mean that there's a whole bunch of stuff that there's, like we've mentioned here a couple of times, there are themes that have been on that list, that document I mentioned, since we started doing Spook-E.
Yeah, they've been there for 6 years.
And there's not one so much where it's like, I pitch it every year and David shoots it down. But there's been ones where almost every year I'm like, we still do have this one. And it's still not quite right. But I'm going to mention it again because I can't get rid of it from my brain.
That's what Dragons was like for a long time. Where year after year we'd go, is it Dragons? Is it time for Dragons? And then we'd go, no.
How do we do Dragons?
Let's do this other thing. And then it was partially inspired by the fact that we did D&D.
Yes, and everyone was like, no dragons?
And it was like, dragons? Because of the way that we framed D&D. And then, that I remember that year in January just going, I think this year is Dragons.
Yes.
It feels right this year.
Yep. So there's ideas that have been on there since the beginning, and I'm sure there are a bunch that will just stay on there that just never quite fit. We might work them into something else. We've talked about doing other speculative things.
Sure, speculative spin-offs.
Yeah, just other side things that are not Halloween themed, but are just their own thing somehow.
Lydia says, I'll support a Spook-E podcast. We've talked about the idea of doing a speculative evolution spin-off series.
Yes.
Right? A descendant where we could do, we could incorporate Cutie and Spook-E and these different ideas. Stay tuned. Because that is something we have considered.
Yeah, it's definitely on the table. Whether or not it's going to happen or when it would happen, who knows?
Jay also suggested the Okapi.
The Okapi would be a good one for that.
Discovoy says giraffes.
Yeah.
Which, yes, the questing beast.
Yes. Yeah.
Arthurian legends would also be a very fun.
Yes.
I don't actually know how many like monsters there are in Arthurian legends,
but it could definitely work.
But I know what QD would be
if we do it. Yeah. If we do a medieval one, pulling from that sort of stuff,
yeah,
would
that's
be
true.
a great excuse.
Actually, the questing beast would be a great spooky creature.
I really want to do the questing.
That should, yeah, we'll have to put that on the list.
Everyone forget that.
Everyone forget we said that. See, now we're
We're
building the medieval.
That one definitely is gonna happen at some point because there's a bunch of creatures on that list that we haven't gotten to do that I really want to do.
Gladiator has brought up SCP.
I was about to say, yeah, and I noticed that.
Aliens is another broad topic. And somebody earlier on when we were talking about tiny monsters mentioned that Stitch could also fit into an Aliens.
Yep.
Which, yeah, we talked about that actually in the when we were discussing what goes in tiny monsters. Do we want to use specific examples? And we did talk about Stitch. And I remember us saying, you know what? There's a few other categories Stitch could fit into. It could fit into an Aliens theme. It could fit into a Disney theme. We could do a Disney year where it's Disney, animated Disney monsters.
And so,
boy, if we were ever going to get sued, that would be the one.
Yep.
Spook-E is not. We are not in danger of getting sued doing the Spook-E episodes. If we decide to publish a book or something, or like do a movie or something like that, where we're like, and we just call it 626, and then Disney knocks on our door and is like, hey, absolutely not.
And
you don't. And they would. They are litigious.
A bit toxic. But SCP stuff is one that I've thought about before, which is SCP would be such an interesting one to do because that's modern mythology.
Explain for everybody.
Yes. So,
because I know
SCP,
what SCP stands for.
Is started as an internet writing prompt group, basically, and it stands for secure, contain, and protect. And the idea is that there is an organization, SCP, that has gone and captured and is containing in various secret facilities around the world creatures and phenomena of unknown variety and origin and effect, going from like monsters to like an orb that sees your deepest thoughts and like just crazy concepts. And it was a writing prompt thing where people started just putting in, here's my SCP-029. And I've created a creature, and they'll put a backstory as to like how was it first encountered out in the world.
So it was kind of community world building.
Yeah, and just each person would, people would just come up with their own SCPs, and then eventually it started getting where people would, connect with other people's writings of, well, my SCP tried to escape and encountered this other SCP that another person wrote. And it has now built up to where there are hundreds of SCPs. And some of them have built up long lore and detailed backstories. And it's taken on its own life on the internet to where it's got its own reputation and mythos. And
it could be fun to do like an internet mythology.
Yes. That's the way.
Where we pick an SCP, we pick like the most famous SCP, but also like, I don't know, Slender Man or internet myths, because that actually is very...
Yeah, I've thought about that before with those because that's one where both, that would be some cool creatures. It would also let me soapbox a little bit, like I did on the cryptozoology episode, because internet myths are such an odd thing to watch happen, because like I'm older than all of these myths, but then I can watch people talk about them with a level of seriousness that like old myths get talked about. And I have that moment of like,
watch the birth of mythology.
Yeah, and it's like a bunch of people, I don't know if they know that
This was invented in 1999.
Yeah, exactly. That the Internet Archive has the first posts of this thing, and that's both fascinating and a little scary. When like there's the famous stories of stuff that happened with Slender Man and people taking it way too seriously, and that's never happened with SCP to my knowledge, but. It is a very interesting phenomena to watch the birth of mythology.
The flip of a internet myths theme could be to do a spooky memes season.
Yeah, yeah.
All meme, but like
Velociraptor.
We could do long Furbies.
We could do long Furbies. We could do Velociraptor.
Yeah.
We could do yeah. That would be fun.
Speaking of fantastic suggestions, Milu suggested doing a spooky season on intermediary forms from Animorph book covers, which I so now
too spooky.
That's too spooky.
Too much.
Lexi says your podcast could be called Species, but it's spelled Species. Lexi, here's the problem. When you give us an idea that sometimes our audience gives us an idea and then it's too good for us not to do, and then we have to do it. So
you be careful.
Well, but the idea of doing a separate podcast or series or something where we can then do because like intermediary forms of Animorph book covers would not really be a spooky season like that. The format of that wouldn't quite the best way to do that would not be in the typical format of a spooky season. But the idea of having a project where we can just go, hey, here's something that's part of this ongoing series. This is going to have its own sort of funky little format. It's Animorph Intermediate. That would be so much fun to do.
There's a lot of cool speculative conversations that don't fit into spooky that would be fun still to get to do.
Yes. Well, and Lydia said, if it were a separate podcast, would you consider cryptids? And that is another thing that we've talked about this. We talked about this last year on the Spook-E live stream, that we actively don't want to do a cryptids season of Spook-E because we don't want to put together a series of detailed scientific discussions that provide relatively rational scientific explanations for the existence of cryptids that are already used to promote pseudoscientific ideas.
It feels like just putting fuel right onto the fire.
But if we were able to do a off-spooky format of discussion, we might be able to come up with a different approach that overcomes that challenge.
Yes.
That allows it to be more discussion based, or even it could even be a series where we are debunking scientific explanations.
Yeah, because there's been speculative explanations for all the cryptids already. Like that's in the nature of cryptid hunting, is trying to answer what is this actually. Because many crypto zoology type people are not assuming that this is just a magical animal that appeared out of nowhere. So they are trying to answer a speculative question of, so what is it?
Lexi says cryptids, but it's all the ways they couldn't have evolved.
Exactly, yeah.
And so it would be fun. As we've talked about before, Spook-E is limited. Yes. It is extremely narrow in its scope, which is intentional. Like, we built it that way on purpose because it makes it easier for us to keep it within manageable bounds. But QD was born out of the pushing of that boundary, right? That desire to go beyond the existing confines of Spook-E.
Yes.
And we will almost certainly be doing more of that. In fact, I don't even mind saying that we will for sure be doing more like that in the future.
Yep.
There's already a concept. So there will be more. There will be more like that.
Yeah. So and there's lots of like tangential things that could be cool to do in that regard of, was talking about the movie stuff, which also I saw Jay said that's the job that would make Will quit the podcast in 20 seconds.
Yes.
And I could do both.
You do both.
I can do both.
Piece of cake.
I can absolutely,
I'll do some more episodes
Yes.
for a little while, and while you're busy doing that.
It's that job and working for Lego are my two top of the pillar. Let me make movies and make Legos. But like talking to people about movie monster creation would be right within the wheelhouse of a speculative channel.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
We can have that conversation of, so how did you go about coming up with this creature if we got to talk to someone? Or to look at a movie creature and go, here's the things we see, obviously. Here's the explanations the movie gave. Here's where we might have tweaked it, if we were making this monster, because they say it does this, but the body they gave it doesn't actually do that, so we would have used this.
It would be so cool to do a podcast where we interview people who work on movie creatures and talk to them like, cool, where did your inspiration come from? Here's what we might have thought about, and they can go, yeah, we talked about that, and here's why we didn't end up going that way. Did you
consider this animal? Because that was the first animal that came to my mind when watching the movie.
Or have them go, yeah, we didn't know that existed until afterwards.
Yeah. And if it's in that moment, then we get to have the delightful moment of, let's show you a picture of this animal.
Yes!
Have you seen a thorny devil before? And they go, what? No. So it would be tons of fun.
We got a bunch of great comments. Nora said, digital folklore is a thing, apparently.
Yes.
Yep. Lexi says, I was here for the inception of Cutie, and I'll be damned if I'm not here for the start of a new podcast. Lexi, you're with us till the end. Absolutely.
Some Milu in reference to us pushing the boundaries and saying, are you saying Spook-E broke containment?
Jay says, I think for whatever the last season of Spook-E is, you should just do Sharknado and Bigfoot, hang up your hats, and walk off into the sunset. It would be to do a Spook-E season where the theme is just the worst stuff.
Yes. Yep.
Spook-E 2045, just the worst. Sarah Grace says it's Spook isn't. Very funny. Amazing. Eli says, I love Spook-E on Monsters from Gaming. That is another one that we've talked about. We haven't done any video game characters yet in Spook. We've done a lot of movies. We've done, we did D&D, obviously. We've made reference to video games in some of our discussions, but we haven't done like a specific
this is from a video game.
Listen, eventually we will have to work up our own Spook-E Super Smash Brothers. That's the spin-off.
Yes, there we go.
Is we come up with a Spook-E platform fighter. Oh no. Yeah. Listen, that's exactly the kind of thought that is not going to turn it into anything real, but is going to make me sit down for several hours and come up with stats.
What's the B move?
And movesets
for every single
for our Spook-E creatures. Oh no.
What's their forward smash?
That's a dangerous prospect.
Yep. Well, and video games is one of those interesting ones where it feels like with video games there's often a either one obvious or too many options. Because I think that I saw them mention Monster Hunter. Yeah, Monster Hunter.
Yes.
And that's one of those where it's like, but which one do we pick? Because unless we do a Monster Hunter season, which we could do some of the famous popular ones, but some of those wouldn't be as good a fit. I'm blanking on I've never played Monster Hunter, but I'm familiar with a bunch of the monsters because I looked them up. But the big dragon, that's one of the big bads.
Yep.
But that's just a European dragon.
Rag something.
That's the one you fight in Smash Brothers.
That's the one that I know because it was in Smash Brothers.
There's an even bigger badder.
Oh, okay.
That's just a four-legged European two-winged dragon that I can't remember the name of. I'm sure it will pop up.
Someone
in the
will say it
soon,
in the comments very soon.
once the lag catches up. But like we could do that, which is probably the most iconic one, and would be great. But that's also just a wyvern.
Yep,
that's just a wyvern.
We already did that.
We did that. So it's like, do we pick one of the weird ones so it's an interesting conversation? But will that be famous enough to make it worth doing Monster Hunter?
We've had this exact same discussion with Pokemon.
Yes.
Because people have been like, oh, you should do Pokemon. And like, yeah, we could totally do a Pokemon season. But the idea of doing a Pokemon for like a tiny monsters season and then going, cool. And also, it's so weird to pull those creatures into isolation.
Yes.
Monster Hunter
just
has
doing
that.
Pikachu.
Yeah, just doing Pikachu would be... Pikachu would be the best case scenario.
Well, and that's the only one that it would feel not weird to do it with. If we just... Rathalos is who you were thinking of.
Thank you, Sarah.
If we just did Bulbasaur, it's like, all right.
Right.
So when are you going to do the other two starters now?
Nope. When do you do the other 1,024 of them?
We don't. And so, yeah, it's like some games it would probably be easy because there are famous creatures that have gotten known from those. Like, like Final Fantasy, there are some creatures that are, notable, and it'd probably be easy to pick one of those because it's not a monster game. Mm-hmm. You're fighting robots and other people as often as you're fighting monsters. But, like, there's a bunch of video games out there. Where in Subnautica would be one of those of like, yeah, but which one? Like, I know that there's a bunch of iconic Titan, big sea creatures, but like, which one do we pick? Do we pick the biggest, baddest one, or do we pick the most interesting one? And there's a bunch of games out there that have a big list of cool creatures. And now it's like if we ever did something from the Avatar movies. Mm-hmm. Which
we have to pick one.
Do we do the Banshee because it's the one they rode the most, or do we do...
we are being given lots of suggestions. Snow-E, Fungi. Milu suggested Shroomy. You do shrooms and then write down your ideas. And then evolve those. They're like drunk history, but it's spooky.
Man, I saw a clip from the guy who did Drunk History, and he talked about how tough a thing it was to do because working with drunk people is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds terrible.
He's like, yeah, we learned a lot of lessons after the first couple of episodes of like, okay, cool. We need to make sure they do this before they get drunk. We need to make sure they actually have read the notes.
Yes.
The first couple didn't.
Lexi also suggested a Parasite season. Which is another one that we've talked about, which would let you do symbiotes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Every now and then we'll have seasons where it's like, here's an idea for a season theme that would let us do this one creature that we really want to do.
Yep.
A Parasites theme would let you do Venom.
Yeah.
And then we gotta come up with other ones. We could do Yerks.
Yeah, I was going to say, Yerks.
We could do Yerks to satisfy the surprisingly vocal contingent of our fans that keeps insisting that we talk about Animorphs.
Which really, can we be surprised?
I'm surprised.
It's a book series about people turning into animals, and then you and I made a podcast. Did we really think that we would not pull?
I'm not surprised that we have fans who are fans of Animorphs. I'm surprised that people still care about Animorphs.
Animorphs was a phenomenon.
Yeah, I keep getting surprised by how much people are attached to Animorphs. I was absolutely obsessed with Animorphs. Yeah. I just didn't think anybody still cared about Animorphs.
I got into Animorphs after, when I was older than it was aimed at, but I wasn't enough of a reader before that. And got really into it, and then was, as is often the case with kids' books, shocked by how graphic those books are.
Yeah.
What? I was like 5 years too old to be reading those books, and was like, ugh! How are these getting through the libraries without any parents freaking out?
And then K.A. Applegate did, because I read Animorphs when I was a kid. Yeah, I was the age demographic. And then K.A. Applegate published a second series of books which I don't remember what it was called, but it was about a bunch of kids that get isekai'd into like mythology, and they go around and they're interacting with different gods and stuff. And that book series was supposed to be like, well, yeah, Animorphs is more like young. This one is more in the young adult, teens, a little more mature. And the second book of that series had a cover that bothered me so much that I couldn't leave it sitting out facing upwards. That book sat face down. Because, yeah, K. Applegate is fantastic and sick.
Yep.
Yeah,
a very talented psychopath.
Incidentally, K. Applegate, from what I've heard, is also like a delightful...
It makes sense.
It sounds like K. Applegate is a fantastic person.
It makes sense. It feels like a lot of people who create really creative yet disturbing things are also quite wonderful people.
Ryan says there are several Animorphs podcasts and a fairly large Reddit community.
Yeah.
They recorded audio, but that's cool.
Nice. Nice. Cool. Also, Gladiator, your list of...
It's a pretty good list.
Sites, definitely some of those would make it on.
Yerks would be so fun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
See, eventually the problem becomes that we can only do one a year.
Yep.
Jay says, Jay, yes, you are correct. Not that I couldn't read the book. I read it. I absolutely read it, and I enjoyed reading it, and I read it, and then when I was done reading for the day, I would close it this way and put it down, face down, because that cover freaked me out.
Yep.
I really didn't like it.
I had a book that I had a moment like that with when I was young. This is a tangent off of it. There was a Garfield book that was his 9 lives. Garfield's 9 lives, and it was the various like incarnations of Garfield that he has reincarnated through his 9 lives. And some of them were like full on cave cat.
Sure.
And it was saber-toothed Garfield with a saber-toothed rats and saber-toothed Odie? Is that the dog's?
Yes.
Am I saying that right?
Yep.
All right.
Odie.
I couldn't remember what letter, if it was D, P, or B. And
Opie is somebody else.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's why I was like, Opie's a name, but Opie's that's the Andy Griffith Show.
Yep.
And it was stuff like that, but then some of them were just like uber cartoony and like film noir cat detective and stuff like that. But one of them was like a scary story, and it was actually really scary. Like, basically he gets possessed by a demon, and the end of the story is him about to attack his sweet old lady owner. And as a little kid, I'm like, no! No! I loved everything else in the book. Everything else I loved. That one I had to ask Mom to remove those pages so that I could read this book without accidentally opening up the scene of her saying, "Come gives Mama cuddles," as he's pouncing at her. And I'm like, this is so wrong. It was another one of those of like, who in the writer's room was like, was this for kids? All right, I'll take on the job of traumatizing them.
Yes, yeah, it's better. Someone's got to do it.
It's in the bylaws. We have to traumatize the kids.
I'll be, oh no, what's the name? Oh, this would have been a funny joke if I remembered the name. The guy who did all the not Disney cartoons.
Oh, Don Bluth?
Don Bluth,
yep.
That's it.
Don Bluth,
I'll be Don Bluth for this.
Yep. Yep.
Caleb says, Yerk slugs that cultivate fungus on leaves. See, now you're getting it. Also, Lexi says, we just have to keep giving them requests that they get incredibly excited about, so they'll never stop making content. Lexi's figured it out. That's also, what was it Jay said? I need everything that Lexi has suggested. Yeah. Sounds like we're going to have to hire Lexi. This will be... Sarah Grace says parasitic monsters are so ish. That is something. We have a friend who has told us that they have listened to every episode of the podcast except for the parasites episode because it's just we do try to make Spook-E not too disturbing.
Yeah, we try not to be too graphic.
Like the Red Caps episode this year is among the grossest episodes of Spook-E that we've done. It was pushing the line, I think, of where we tend to keep tonally spooky.
Well, I think it's also why, like, when we discuss some stuff like parasites, like when we did discuss them in the fungus episode, they came up when we did parasites, obviously, but also they've come up in other things when, like, in the cicadas episode, we talked about the Massospora in more detail. We often get very jokey during those conversations to try to undercut the fact that, what's happening right now is actually really gross and really creepy in a very horror movie way. But it's also kind of ridiculous in how horrifying it is. So maybe if we laugh about it.
Gladiator suggested Disturbie.
Disturbie.
To which I will say, scary. What was the other comment? There was another comment. Oh, Nora suggested doing Dimension 20 homebrew creatures. We could do corn cuties.
Corn cuties.
Listen, number one, yes. The idea of doing hyper-specific... This is the paradox with Spook-E is that we only do it once a year. So we do try to keep... But if we did more of it, I would 100% be on board for doing these extraordinarily niche. Mm-hmm. Also, Brennan can come on.
I was going to say, I will
and
do
be
that.
Our guest.
I will. This is a verbal agreement. I will absolutely do that series if you all get Brennan Lee Mulligan to come on
Brennan
as a guest.
To come on the podcast, and we'll speculatively evolve.
Just for at least 5 episodes.
5 episodes. The corn cuties obviously are...
They're too adorable. We'll finish the series by making Brennan mad at us.
Yeah, that seems to be the way to go. That's how the Brennan trajectory goes. Is that it's delightful, and then it's a monologue, and then that's the end of the thing.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Lexi says, I feel like we could get... But Lexi, if you get Brennan, you're hired. There you go. You can come on as a consultant. That's your job now.
Yep.
Go get Brennan for the podcast.
This is your interview.
We are not as far off as because here's the thing. We know people who know Hank Green.
Yep.
Who work with Hank. I kind of work with Hank. I've never met Hank, but I do work. I write for SciShow. I have written words that Hank Green has said.
Exactly.
Yes. He knows Brennan. But also, we were at Dragon Con this year, and I was talking to our friend Trevor Valley, and somehow Dropout came up, and he was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could get, like, Sam Reich to, like, deliver a message for the science track? And I was like, yeah, that would be cool. And then Trevor said, I texted him, but he was unavailable. And I went, what?
Yep.
So we are, like, 2 degrees separated from multiple people drop out. So it can happen. We'll get them. We just need also, like, an audience that is several times larger than what it actually is. So that it's worth a time. It's worth their time to come on in and get the common descent audience. This is First of all, our audience is fairly small. Second of all, I have to imagine that the overlap between fans, that's a circle. Great. Are we going to reach an expanded community of listeners, of audience? Almost certainly not. Absolutely.
You could reach some of your audience twice. And isn't that something?
Well, they'd be so excited about it. That'd be really cool. Also, we've been known to make some noise. So if you just keep that in mind. Just the whole time that we're hanging out with Brennan, we're just like finding excuses to do like sound effects. Yep. That was a pretty good one, right?
Right.
It sound like a deer bugle. What would that sound like, a deer bugle? Or an elk bugle. Woo. Oh man, this is the dream.
That would also be one of those That would be one of our first interesting moments of we have to not fanboy over our guest.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool. We got a bunch of Gladiator said Spooky Monster Manual would be awesome. Yes, it would. Lydia says red caps are just kind of read as mammal hardware running vulture software.
Yes! Yes!
Is
Yes! Yes!
excellent.
There. That's the the little text at the bottom of their character card. There it is. That perfectly said.
Li says Spotlight with Hank Green would be fire. Listen,
oh yeah.
I didn't not kind of try. I didn't try hard because I think if I tried hard, we actually could just get Hank. That was a thing that I was thinking about recently. Where I was like, if we want to do something with Hank Green, we just reach out to Hank Green.
Yes.
We're close enough to the Greens that if we had a thing to do, because that's the issue with something like that, where it's like, yeah, it'd be super cool to meet someone like Hank Green, but I don't have anything to talk to Hank Green about. Like, yeah, we could be friends. Like, we would just chat. But, like, if I went up to him at a conference or something, yeah, I don't have, like, a pitch off the top of my head. It would just be going up and being like, hey, you're cool. Let's be friends. Let's work together, I guess.
Which I know also happens where it's just, hey, I think you're cool. Would we want to do a project at some point? And then that starts the conversation.
Right.
But yeah, it's a bit that imposter syndrome of, what do I have to offer?
Yeah. These are just people.
Yep.
You just reach out to them.
Yep.
And they would just say no.
Yep.
Fantastic. Also, it sounds like there are people here in the comments who aren't familiar with Dropout. You should absolutely go watch Dropout.
No, you should message them to say that if they want to get you as an audience, they should come on here, because it actually would be a boost, because 12 of our listeners haven't.
There you go. You get a solid dozen. Lexi, already doing the job as assigned. Speculatively evolving Hank Green, featuring special guest Hank Green. Now that's how we do it. We do a Spook-E season where we evolve people that we want to be on the podcast.
I mean, that would also be a fun thing if we did a Spook-E series. It's a speculative channel. Is just have guests on and they get to pick.
Yeah.
What's Brennan, Hank. What do you want to speculatively evolve?
Yes.
Pick whatever creature, mythological, fictitious, video game, movie, from one of your things, if it's something you've created.
Absolutely.
You bring it, that's the episode. You can do the background if you want, if you are passionate about it.
Now we're thinking.
That would be
this is how we do it.
A ton of fun.
Incidentally, we are in a period of time at the podcast that we are thinking about doing new stuff, expanding. Will and I both work for the podcast now. That's very exciting. We are bigger and more practiced than we've ever been. We have been in discussions with potential collaborators, with other podcast people, about what other stuff we can do in the future. So, a lot of the ideas we're talking about right now are very sort of silly
ones. Like, even if that would be super easily doable, like having a guest on and doing a Spook-E.
Absolutely.
Like, that's planning the timing for us all to be on the computer at the same time is the biggest trouble with that. But the logistics of reaching out to those people and having a schedule for those types of episodes and the time to edit those episodes is probably a ways off before we're ready to take on extra projects like that.
But we also need a plan.
Yes.
And that's really, the reality is that a lot of these things don't just happen when we go, here's a funny idea, I send off an email, and then it happens. We need a plan, we need a mission, we need a goal, we need to know who we're working with and what we're capable of doing. But we are having those discussions, and we're thinking about those things. So as you, if there's things you'd like us to see, if there's things you think are feasible or would be really fun, by all means, feel free to suggest things to us. Feel free to put us in touch with people. that is how these ideas get off the ground.
Well,
We are in a space where we're ready to get more ideas off the ground.
And as we've mentioned in other discussions, letting us know what you're enthusiastic about is huge.
Yes.
It might not seem like as big as giving us an idea, but if we mention something, having someone say, like, the reaction here to the idea of a speculative channel and people actually being like, yes, no, I would listen to a speculative channel, is super helpful, because we have these ideas and we often be like, yeah, that'd be fun. We'd be able to have fun with that.
Yes.
Is it worth the time, though? Is it worth the amount of time that having a whole other channel would be? And we don't always know, because we can't guess how everyone's going to react. Like, we have a better idea than we did early on, but we don't know. So you letting us know is also hugely helpful to potentially making a silly idea a reality.
Yes. Caleb says, and you remembered to fill out the Keep the Business form.
Yes.
We did.
We
We've been filling out all the Keep the Business forms.
We did that. Check.
Listeners, we really enjoy doing this podcast. And it is an absolute joy.
It's pretty magical
to be able to interact with an audience of people who are really big fans of ours, people who are really supportive of us and really encouraging of us to do things that you will enjoy, but that also we get excited about. This is super cool. One of the reasons why we've been doing live streams so much the last year is because this kind of audience interaction is super fun for us. It gets the enthusiasm going. It puts ideas in our head for things we could do in the future. It's really exciting, and it's really helpful.
Well, and it's for me, it's rejuvenating. It is very encouraging and wonderful to get to interact with people who are enjoying the things we do, but also like a group of enthusiastic, like-minded, and people. You're all bringing the same energy in that we're hoping we're conveying across the podcast. So it's just a really wonderful affirmation to get to interact with you all. So it makes a huge impact.
Every year we do Spook-E feels better than the year before it.
Yep.
It becomes easier and more comfortable. And the more we talk about ways that we can go in the future, every year just adds to the foundation that makes it more exciting to think about what comes next. We will continue to do Spook-E every year. We will continue to do QD into the future, because we've done it twice now and it's a big hit with us and with our audience. We will continue to do other Spook-E things. A lot of the ideas that we've talked about in this discussion are for serious things that we could do in the future.
Yep.
That we will continue to consider.
Oh, that's another thing that would be fun for a side channel that we've talked about doing, but we just haven't actually discussed whether or not where we would fit it in if we do want to do it, is a retro QD season.
Oh, yes.
QD for the previous,
ones that we hadn't done.
Yeah, to go through and do stuff that would have been the QD had we started doing QD back then.
Yes.
And we already have a list for basically every season of a QT that would have fit in there.
So we've got there are definitely things we could do. We will also continue to do Spook-E live streams, because these are tons of fun, and we will continue to do other live streams all throughout the year.
James was emotional because he found the part of the internet with Animorph fans. Yep.
A new episode of the podcast, episode 204, is coming out in 3 hours. That is going to drop. I will say, nobody correctly guessed from the teaser what this episode is about.
Yeah.
Some people did get close.
They got very close.
It is a weird one.
Yes.
There wasn't you'll see when it comes out. This one was hard to clue in specifically. Super fun episode. I had a really good time putting it together. The end of the year Q&A submission form is open now. You can find that link on our podcast our podcast website. Go submit your question, 1 question per person, please, and we will be answering those in bulk at the end of the year. And then before you know it, it's going to be the 8-year anniversary of the podcast.
It's coming up
At the end of January. We will have been doing this for 8 years.
This many
Years. And this many.
Yeah. We're gonna run out of fingers soon. Like,
we'll have to hire a new person.
mm-hmm.
We'll have to get somebody else in here to add on the fingers. Fantastic. Crawlon said we could do it for Valentine's Day. Somebody earlier, I think Caleb, suggested a Christmas Spook-E. Yeah, we've talked about doing seasonal ones too.
It would be fun to do a Christmas Spook-E. There's a whole bunch of Christmas creatures. Do the Yule Cat.
Jay says, I thought I had it. If I remember correctly, Jay, you're very close.
Mm-hmm.
Milu. That is the end of our Spook-E live stream for this year. Thank you all so much for joining us. This has been super fun. Please continue to engage with us and stay in touch with us and follow our things. You can join us on the Discord. You can follow us on social media. You can keep up with the things that we are all doing. With that, alas, it is time. Let's get out of here.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. Toodles.